All right, welcome back to we are now on part 5 for the sacraments, but this is, for confirmation, it's part 2, okay? So part 2 for confirmation. Now, this is where I'm going to talk about what it is that God desires to be able to bestow on you as you say yes to confirmation, as you say yes to His love, as you say yes to His grace, to His mercy. These are the areas where He wants to help you. Now, there's 2 distinct ways that traditionally we talk about this, okay? So you have the gifts. You have the gifts of the Holy Spirit, okay? Now, I'm going to take a little detour here for a second. This right here you see that? Confirmation and RCIA Final Oral Exam 2020. All I did was change the one from 2019 to 2020, okay? But what we're going to do is, our intent is going to be do a final exam, okay? And in there, as you can see, one of the pages here is the gifts of the Holy Spirit, okay? Now, there's 7, okay? God can do anything. God is not confined by just 7 things, okay? But these are traditionally how we see God bestowing gifts on us. They're very broad gifts, okay? But to be able to recognize them as being bestowed upon you as you're confirmed in a more full way, all right? Now, I came up with a little way for you to memorize them. WCKPUFF. PUFF. All right? Think of a candle. It has a wick, right? Wick. All right, that would be W-I-C-K. Okay, a wick on a candle. So you light the candle, and to blow it out, you puff, right? Wick, puff. So just that's the way you can remember the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, okay? Now, a gift is something given. What is God giving? He's giving Himself in the form of these gifts, okay? So this is grace being given. Now, we have wisdom, counsel, knowledge. No. I don't know how to spell knowledge. I don't have the knowledge to know how to spell knowledge. Okay, knowledge. K, right? P, piety. U, understanding, and I'm running out of room. Understanding. F is fortitude. And F is fear. Fear of the Lord. Wisdom, counsel, like a counselor at your school, counsel, right? Knowledge, piety, understanding, fortitude, and fear of the Lord. Now, the way I define these, I came up with a way to define these in a way that seems to make sense to me in relationship to these, okay? Selena has talked about these. I don't remember. I think we had class on this, but I'm going to define these in a way that to me seems to make sense. This is not the only way to define these words, but hopefully it gives you a sense of the gifts that you're receiving, okay? Now, I know if you were to say, what do you want to receive from the Holy Spirit? You might not list these 7 things, but I think if you go deeper with it, you'll realize just how powerful these are, okay? Now, I listed these in order of wick puff. I'm going to now change the order because I want to present them to you in a different way. Okay? Because I think they build on each other. That doesn't necessarily mean that that you can only have one at this time and then one later on. That's not what I mean. But I mean the meaning, the significance of them builds. You grow spiritually. So we talked about confirmation as you growing in spiritual maturity. These gifts are bestowed in such a way that you grow in spiritual maturity. Okay? All right. So I'm going to start with knowledge. I still don't know how to spell it. What is knowledge? You say, well, it's when you know something. Okay? So knowledge is when you know something. How is that a gift of the Holy Spirit? It's when you know something about God, yourself, or the world that, how do I want to say it? In that you needed God's help. In other words, you needed grace, God's help to know it. What's an example of that? Do you know about the Trinity? How did you find out about the Trinity? Well, somebody taught you it, right? But how did they find out about it? Well, at some point, if you go all the way back to Jesus, he was the one who taught us about the Trinity. So this knowledge comes to us not through ourselves. This is not you observing it just in nature. This is coming from God. God had to reveal it. So I suppose we put in this, that you needed God's revelation. You needed God to speak to you. Now, this knowledge is not just head knowledge. This is not just head knowledge, all right? This is heart knowledge also. This is where you come to know things in your heart as well. So, you know something about God, or you know something about yourself. You grew in spiritual maturity. You learned something about yourself, but it came by God's help. It came in prayer, and you realized, wow, I'm greedy. Wow, I'm really greedy, right? You come to this realization about yourself, but it comes in prayer. It came from God who kind of gave you that knowledge, that insight. Okay? I shouldn't have picked something bad. You say, well, I have the capacity. I have the capacity to be a really good teacher. God's given me that. It's a gift. I'm not saying it like to brag. I'm not talking about myself. I'm just using that as an example. For you, right? You say you come to this realization, wow, I love teaching. Or I love, you come to this moment where it's like, I really love the Mass. I really love being at Mass. Okay, you came to know something about yourself or about God, right? But you needed God's help to know that. That's why it's a gift of the Holy Spirit. We're not talking about natural knowledge here. We're talking about supernatural knowledge of the head and the heart. Okay? All right. Now, let's see what I put on here. On your little test, it says, knowledge is the grace to have received the teachings of our faith. I think I might reword that a little bit. Okay? But to know something about God, yourself, the world. Okay. Make sense? All right. Now we're going to go to understanding. Understanding is where, by God's help, so by His grace working in you, you understand things in a supernatural way. Supernatural way. Now I'm going to put a word here. You make connections. Connections. You begin to have the ability to make connections. So when you understand something, it's like, oh, I get it, right? So if knowledge, let's say you come to know the Trinity, right? But then you come to understand what the Trinity is doing in your life, then you have a connection between knowledge and understanding. It's like, I'm making connections with the knowledge that I have. What would be another example? You develop spiritual maturity. You come to know something about yourself, and therefore, from that, you come to understand what your vocation is, perhaps, like to marriage, right? One of the sacraments. You come to a deeper understanding of that. So the way I also put understanding is, it's kind of like a spider web. It's kind of like if you have some knowledge, right? You have these things that you know, the Trinity, the 10 Commandments, the 7 sacraments. Understanding is kind of like the spider web that connects them so you understand how they all fit together. I can remember a time in my life where, so I was trying to rebel against the Catholic Church and the moral teachings. I didn't like the moral teachings of the Church because they were really hard to follow, right? Especially the teachings on sexuality and all that kind of stuff. Those are really hard to follow. You have to say no to the world in many ways in order to say yes to God. But as I opened my heart up to God, and I started surrendering my own desires, my own thoughts, my own feelings to God, I came to understand the Church's teachings as being beautiful, as being life-giving, as not just a bunch of saying no's, but as true freedom. That's understanding. That was the gift of the Holy Spirit at work in my heart. But I needed God to get to that point, because I wasn't going to get there on my own. That's not what I desired. It's not what I wanted. Okay? But I tried to open my heart to it, and so the grace of confirmation was at work. So I started to make connections. So when the Church says, abortion's wrong, or the Church says birth control's wrong, or the Church says this or that's wrong, these are things that the world is offering us, and we come to a point where we have an understanding and saying, I understand why that's wrong, because it's a betrayal of love. I understand why that's wrong, because it's a betrayal of love and freedom. I understand why that's wrong, because it's a betrayal of life, love, and freedom, right? Does that make sense? All right. So you can pray, say, Jesus, give me understanding in this, if you're struggling with something. Okay, all right. You know what I'm going to do before I move on? Sorry, little break here. I'm just going to take a picture. Okay, because I'm gonna update my definitions in here. Last year I put that together really fast, so I'm going to update that. All right. Okay, so knowledge is pieces of things that God gives us to know about ourselves, about God, or the world, right? That's supernatural. Understanding, we get a supernatural understanding of how these things fit together. And then we have wisdom, right? The W, wisdom. Okay, wisdom is the supernatural ability, supernatural ability to apply God's grace in our lives. Okay, supernatural ability to apply God's grace in our lives. The key word here is to apply, or key words. To apply it, right? So, for example, I know that generosity is an important virtue. It'll actually be one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit too. It's important. I know that it's important, right? Understanding is, I understand why it's important. I understand the beauty that comes from being generous. And I understand the brokenness that comes from being selfish, right? Okay. Wisdom is, I now know how to apply generosity in my life. I know how to be generous, so I'm applying it. So wisdom is that ability to apply it to the here and now in my life, right? To put it into action, to know how to put it in action. I know that gossip, talking about my neighbor in a bad way, I know it's wrong. I develop an understanding, by God's grace, an understanding of the damage that it does and why it's wrong. Wisdom is my ability to apply that to my life so that I am not gossiping. I am not talking bad things about people behind their back, right? Okay? So it's the ability to apply it in a positive way. Wisdom would also be the ability, I'll stick with that. The ability to apply that in my life. So wisdom, so you think about who are the people in your life who are really wise. You think of people who know how to make right decisions, good decisions. So can make good decisions. Okay? You know, you remember as a teenager, it's like, man, I made a lot of bad decisions as a teenager, okay? I still make some bad decisions. But wisdom is the ability to make good decisions. Now, this is obviously in the context of something supernatural. This is God enlightening you. This is God opening your heart to something that you wouldn't necessarily know on your own in order to help you make good decisions in your life, okay? To have wisdom. All right. You got that? Okay? All right. The last one in this connection, so we talked about knowledge, understanding, wisdom. The last one we're going to talk about kind of in this series of 4 is counsel. So counsel is the supernatural ability. Now, when I say supernatural ability, I'm not talking about like Captain America and Batman, Superman kind of supernatural stuff. I'm talking about grace that comes from God. God speaking to you in your heart, okay? That's what I mean by supernatural. It's something that God has given you. It's beyond yourself and it's beyond the natural world. So this is where counsel is supernatural ability to apply God's grace. What was that? God's grace to others. All right, you know what I'm going to say? To the lives of others. To the lives of others. That's others, okay? So you think of a counselor at school. What does a counselor at school do? They help another person make good decisions in their life, right? They help another person work through problems. They help another person figure things out. So counsel, as a gift of the Holy Spirit, is a supernatural ability to apply God's grace to the lives of others. If wisdom was kind of applying it to oneself, applying it to the world, this is helping others, okay? I would also include in this the desire to help others. I still can't spell others. This is desire. The desire to help others. Counsel. To be one who counsels. To be one who leads and shares and shepherds. You can think of all these words. So this counsel, we begin to move where it focuses on the other. So a shepherd, right? So you think of a shepherd. One who guides. One who leads. Okay? So counsel. All right. And I erased the last one without taking a picture of it. Darn it. All right. Okay, so counsel. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, this is going on. You know what? We're going to have to do confirmation in 3 parts. This is going on really long. Okay, now let's talk about piety. Piety is having reverence, right? Reverence. I don't know how you spell reverence. Reverence. It's having reverence. It's being someone who's respectful, who's caring towards things of God. A reverence for God. Piety is living, what did I put? The grace to live the gospel with reverence and integrity. So piety, so somebody who's impious, is living a bad life. There's no reverence in their life. You think of a bully, right? Bullies go around making fun of people. That's the opposite of piety. Piety is having reverence for others in a supernatural way. So we say supernatural reverence. It's not just actions, though. It's your mind. So let's say you use a lot of bad words. Let's say somebody uses a lot of bad words. Piety helps a person overcome that. So they're not using dirty words. They're not using bad words. They're not telling dirty jokes. When they're in church, they desire to participate. They want to sing. They want to respond to the prayers. This helps us overcome spiritual laziness. So to overcome spiritual laziness, right? To overcome spiritual laziness, we're in tune to God. All right? So that's piety. Piedad. Señor. Oh no, that's different. That's a different word. Sorry, never mind. Never mind. Okay, that's piety. Okay, fortitude. Then you can see the word fort, strength. Or the way we would put it also is courage. But this is not just normal courage. This is the grace. This is a grace to be courageous when it's beyond our own ability. So you look at the lives of the saints, right? Saints who are martyrs. Their courage extended beyond their natural ability. They had something that was a grace from God, but they said yes to it. They said, Lord, give me that grace. Help me to have that grace so that I can bear witness to you in the world and be courageous doing it. So you think of when you're in school or whatever you're going through and people are maybe making fun of your beliefs. Well, fortitude will help you to be strong and to be courageous and to say what God would want you to say, right? It doesn't just mean fighting back, but it means acting in the way that God would want you to act, okay? So to be courageous, okay? We often learn the most fortitude by our mistakes. We learn by our mistakes. We learn from those moments when we chickened out, when we were cowards, right? We bring that back to God, and then we learn from that. And He helps us then to have more fortitude, more courage. Okay? All right. And then the last one is fear of the Lord. This is living in awe. Living in awe. I don't know what that word is in Spanish, but it's just realizing that God is God. God is so much more than us, right? And it's not that we're putting ourselves down, but we're just recognizing who God really is. So this word fear, it's not being afraid of God, but being in awe of God. God is just so incredible, right? Okay, so it's not afraid. It's not to tremble in, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not terror in that kind of fear, right? But it's, so you think of someone you really love, you don't want to hurt them, do you? That's a form of fear of the Lord, or that's a form of fear. It's like, I have a fear of hurting the person, all right? So I'm going to put that down. A fear of hurting someone. A fear of hurting someone, okay? So living in awe, it's just like, okay? So fear of the Lord is fear of hurting God. A fear of hurting God because I love Him. Because He's so good. I don't want to hurt Him. Okay? The definition I put, to be in awe of God's unconditional love and power in our lives. Just to be in awe of it. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop this video here. And then I have one more to do. So we're in part 5. I'll see you back in part 6. All right. God bless.